No one in the news media seems to really care about Ebola anymore, but it wasn't that long ago, back in October, when you couldn't turn on CNN, Fox, or MSNBC without seeing basically round-the-clock coverage of Ebola and the huge threat that was seen to the United States. Now, generally, when those sorts of threats are overplayed in our view, it's seen as just a sensationalistic sort of grab for ratings. We know in the past, things like CNN's coverage of the Malaysian flight did actually provide a big boost in ratings for them, even though I think that's insane. So the question is, did their huge focus on Ebola actually help them out this time? Turns out not so much. For the month of October, CNN's viewership was down 5% compared to October 2013. In prime time, its audience fell 18% last month compared to October 2013. Fox News and MSNBC also suffered rating decreases in October compared to the previous year. And if you compare the cable news channel's primetime ratings in October to its primetime ratings during this past summer, viewership was also down. So whichever way you look, in comparison to the months that came before it or in comparison to the same month the year before, the ratings were down. In addition, viewership for CBS Evening News, NBC Nightly News, and ABC's World News Tonight failed to generate an audience bounce during the news media's unofficial Ebola month. Combined, the three news programs attracted roughly 23 million viewers each week in October. That compares to the 23 million viewers who tuned in each week during October 2013, when we all weren't worried about dying from Ebola.
So now, this article from Media Matters doesn't mention it, but there's another huge factor at play here, and it doesn't really help the cable companies. October is the month before the election, and last year there was no election. So the fact that the month before the election, plus Ebola scare, plus all that stuff, and the ratings still go down, it's terrible news for cable news, okay? So they did all they could to amp up everything, and it totally failed. But I don't necessarily think that that's connected to the Ebola scare didn't work as much as it is the ship is sinking, and you can throw whatever you want at the problem, but it isn't going to work. You can go, boo, Ebola, sharks, sharkbola, right? And by the way, the elections might have even hurt them because people are so bored by politics, right? So, but overall, I think that the real issue isn't what happened with one particular news story or one particular month. I think it's that television news is losing audience at an enormous pace because, look, their average age of their audience at CNN is 63 years old. At Fox News is 68. And the primetime news isn't any better. So it's only a matter of time before you lose significant audience. There's no young people watching you at all.
Well, it's also there. You know, I think what CNN should do is they should try to do less hard news and more fluff.
Right? You might have actually tried that. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe give a show to a chef or something, or to a guy who eats too many McDonald's. Do some shit like that. Maybe mix it up. I'm just saying, mix it up. You know, you talk about how I think the age certainly is a factor. I've been watching the news a lot in the last week. It is horrible. It is unbelievable. They will not give you any information. They sent Luke Russert this week to Georgia to understand why working people in an economy that's recovering don't feel approving of Barack Obama's handling of the economy. So he went to talk to poor people, and we found out that what we need to do is have less regulations and more tax cuts. That was the point of his fucking report.
No.
Yes! That was the point of it.
Poor people said, please, more tax cuts for the rich.
The poor people just said, Washington's not listening to us. He had 6 different poor people say that. That was the premise of his piece. So he just reinforced that for 3 minutes. And then he talked to a white businessman who he called a job creator. He goes, he'd like to create jobs, but he says he's burdened by taxes and regulations. Yeah. So that was the only solution they gave. And the rest of it was just him interviewing people saying Washington doesn't. So my whole point is that the news, they're doing that bullshit on TV of Chuck Todd, David Gregory before him, Brian Williams, they're all doing the same thing. They're afraid that they're going to offend someone in their audience and lose. Oh, if conservatives hear me telling the truth about climate, they'll maybe stop watching. And if they hear me telling the truth about Joni Ernst, maybe they'll stop watching. Yeah. So they don't tell you the truth. So consequently, they're not giving you any information that helps your life or helps you become a better citizen or a more informed voter. So that's why the only people who watch that are for the fucking catheter ads. Why else would you watch that fucking TV TV news anymore.
And it turns out that not giving the people the truth is not a winning strategy.
Not a winning strategy, Cenk. Bringing another corporate mouthpiece on to give us the news is not, being neutral instead of objective is not a winning strategy, yet they are clinging to it, you know?
Well, I think the best example of them clinging to it is that CNN hired Jay Carney the second he stepped down as Obama's chief propagandist. That's what he was, the White House spokesman. And then they immediately hired him and pretend it's not partisan. So that's to that. But you know, in this article, one of the things I saw this on CNN when they put this piece up on CNN.com, it was Ebola. Is Ebola the ISIS of biological agents? And I tweeted out I didn't even tweet the link, I just took a screen capture of the headline, and it got hundreds of retweets. And I think the point there is that people are onto the game. So it's not just it's not just the age, and it's not just feeding them bullshit, but people are onto, this is just terrible what they're doing. Yes, you got it, Ebola and ISIS, we figured out, and people are just onto it, and yeah, they're going to age themselves out, and online is the future.
Do you know how many people in America are dying of Ebola right now? 0. Mm-hmm. So of all the people who contracted Ebola in America, 0 of them died. They all got cured. So that weeks and weeks of nonstop fear-mongering by cable news seems really prescient.
But Jimmy, if you multiplied that 0 times 1,000,000, you'd...
Yeah, right. 0, yeah.
Yeah, and you guys they also missed the entire point, a point that they could have made, and again, this is going off of Cenk's great story yesterday about Obama not getting credit, and the government not getting credit. If the government has a scandal, or if they don't handle something well, that is all that you'll hear about for weeks or months, or in some cases, years. But the story that they kept telling was that the government isn't prepared to deal with Ebola. If you ask the people, they would say they largely do think the government is prepared. And now we find out the government apparently was prepared. It could protect you from international diseases spreading to our borders. Are they telling that story now? Are they focusing on that? Are they giving any credit to the government or to the CDC specifically? The CDC that they disparaged multiple times? Not at all. You don't hear that story.
All right, I've got to add 2 things. One is they have Phil Simms, Stephen A. Smith disease, okay, in television. So Phil Simms in sports is the guy who says the league is always right, every play is fantastic. And so in the news world, that's the anchors going out there. The government is always right. The Pentagon has never lied to you, and you'll have Karl Rove, the spokesperson for the Republicans on Fox News, saying the Republicans are always right. You'll have Axelrod and Gibbs on MSNBC saying the Democrats are always right. And it's always the powerful are always right. And then you've got Stephen A. Smith screaming at ESPN, and everything's always wrong, and he's trying to grab attention he's outraged by every single thing. And that's the sensationalism. Is Ebola the ISIS of biological agents? Oh my God! Right. So they're either Jay Carney or they're Stephen A. Smith every freaking day, and it's not smart and it's not real. Yeah. So if you want to get a real audience, what you should do is be earnest and be smart and say, hey, listen, look, guys, Ebola is scary. We said that on the show. It's scary, but let's see how they do, right? And the CDC are not a bunch of dummies. They're scientists. And then jury's out. Jury just came in. They cured everybody, and we did not have an Ebola crisis. Then come back on air and say that. You gotta say that. Otherwise, you lose credibility. Then the audience rightfully thinks you're not smart or honest.